Let's talk about roles and adding roles to your FreshAiR Reality. Roles are an abstract concept. You can optionally add roles to your reality to give entirely different experiences to your user by presenting them with a choice as soon as they start the reality. This can mean many different things. Great examples of how to think about roles are as follows. You could have some sort of hospital reality, where there's 3 different roles available when you first start the reality. That of a nurse, that of a doctor, or that of a patient, for example. If you choose the nurse role, the content and experience you're presented in that reality is very different than if you were to choose the doctor role or the patient role. Since roles are a bit abstract in how you can define them, you can also use roles for various other things, such as defining a difficulty setting at the beginning of the reality, defining which team a user joins during a reality, or defining a certain role within a team. The important takeaway about roles are that when you create roles, 2 things happen. One is that you're presented with multiple screens of triggers, one for each role. So what this means is each role gets its own separate trigger screen, and thus each role gets its own separate content and pathing and conditions and actions. In turn, this will translate to an entirely different experience for each role. Secondly, the way roles work are, once you've added roles to an experience, any user that starts that experience, the very first thing that they're prompted with, even before they see start of game reality triggers, is a prompt to choose which role they'd like to play as. Knowing those 2 things, you can creatively think about how to make different sorts of roles for your reality to make it a more rich and engaging experience. For the Wolf Runner reality, our time survival reality, we wanted to make roles represent difficulty settings so that most users could choose a normal difficulty setting where real distances and timed elements applied, and younger children and others that wish to play at an easier difficulty setting would be able to choose that at the beginning of the reality to have a more lenient gameplay experience so that everyone could enjoy it. To add roles to your reality, simply click Add Another Role and then click Edit on the new box. You'll want to type in a title, click on the image thumbnail to provide an image icon, and then give a brief description. Now, notice what happens to my trigger screen as soon as I begin defining roles for my reality. The trigger screen looks mostly the same, but notice this new bar here that shows the normal difficulty role. This is more easily explained once we have another role built out. So let's go back to our Roles tab and add another role by clicking Add Another Role and then clicking Edit. I'll fill this out in the same fashion I've done the first. And then I'll hit Save. Going back to my Triggers tab, now notice there's 2 different options here. We have the normal difficulty, which all my existing triggers fall under, and then I have my easy difficulty role, which when I click on, I'm presented with a blank triggers view. This is intended. Again, remember, roles are actually chosen right when the reality starts, and depending on which role the user chooses, they're presented with an entirely different system of triggers. And so let's take a look at some best practices here. It's important to keep in mind you can have as many roles as you like. If I wanted my difference in roles to be basically the same gameplay experience, but with slight differences in either actions or conditions or what have you, a best practice would be actually not to define another role separately and then start from scratch on it, but instead to take the existing role where I do have lots of content and duplicate it so that all that content and triggers are duplicated so that I can edit and change and modify for the new role from there. I would do that by simply clicking here to duplicate the normal difficulty role. Now you'll see that I have 3 roles: normal difficulty, easy difficulty, which I defined myself in the Roles tab, and normal difficulty copy, which was created just a second ago when I clicked this duplicate icon. If I go to my Roles tab, you'll see all 3 roles here. Let's remove the easy difficulty role that I first created and set up this copy in the way I wish. The reason it's a good idea in this case to have my easy difficulty role start off as a duplicate of my normal difficulty role is that when I click on the easy difficulty role, all the triggers are already there, same as normal difficulty. From here, I'll simply tweak some settings to make the gameplay experience easier to users. Much easier than starting from scratch and recreating all these triggers, especially for larger realities. Again, you can have as many roles as you'd like. If you'd like to edit your roles or remove them, simply go to the Roles tab and modify accordingly. Once you set up a few roles, check out your FreshAiR app and see how the experience works for you.